16 years ago, Tamika Chesser appeared on Australian reality television. Today, she appeared before a court from a secure forensic mental health facility and answered 2 serious charges. She pleaded not guilty to murdering her partner Julian Story. She also pleaded not guilty to destroying his remains in an attempt to interfere with the course of justice. But those pleas were not the only major development. Chesser's lawyer told the court that investigations were underway into her mental competence. That question now stands between this case and the trial that is expected to follow. And behind today's short court appearance is a deeply disturbing story that began with a fire, a missing part of a victim's remains, and a search that lasted for weeks. The story begins in Port Lincoln, a coastal community in South Australia. Julian Story was 39 years old. According to the mayor of Port Lincoln, Julian had lived in the area for nearly his entire life. His family was well known locally, and his mother was described as a prominent community volunteer. On Thursday, June 19, 2025, emergency services were called to a unit on the Flinders Highway after receiving reports of a fire. Inside that unit, they discovered Julian's remains. Police described the scene as extremely confronting. They said Julian's body had been dismembered and that part of his remains was missing. 2 days earlier, at around midnight on Tuesday, June 17th, police believed Julian was murdered. Tamika Chesser, who had been in a relationship with Julian, was arrested and charged with his murder. She had once appeared on the Australian reality program Beauty and the Geek back in 2010. That television connection quickly pushed the case into national and international headlines. But there is a danger in telling this only as the story of a former reality contestant, because the person at the center of this tragedy was Julian Story. He was not simply a name in a headline, he was a son, a friend, and a longtime member of the Port Lincoln community. After his remains were discovered, investigators revealed that they had not recovered his head. Police appealed directly to the public for help. They released security camera images showing Chesser dressed in black and walking 3 dogs. Investigators asked residents to examine any security camera or vehicle camera recordings that could show her movements between midnight on June 17th and the afternoon of June 19th. At that stage, police said there was no obvious motive. They knew that Julian and Chesser had been in a relationship, but they were still investigating the circumstances surrounding that relationship and the events inside the unit. The search for Julian's missing remains became one of the most important parts of the investigation. Major crime detectives, specialist officers, and local police searched several locations around Port Lincoln. They examined scrubland, areas close to a cemetery, and ground near the Winter Hill Lookout. Investigators also recovered an Elvis Presley shirt, a drink bottle, and a wristband from the scrubland. Police said the items attracted their attention because both Julian and Chesser were Elvis Presley fans. The items were taken for forensic examination, but police did not immediately confirm whether they were connected to the alleged murder. After searching every identified area of interest, officers suspended the wider operation. For Julian's family, that meant preparing to hold his funeral without all of his remains. Then, on July 31st, a member of the public made a disturbing discovery in scrubland east of Port Lincoln. What appeared to be a human skull had been found. The location had not previously been searched by police. Investigators said it was not an area that had been identified through the information available to them. Specialists from Forensic Science South Australia examined the remains. In September, police confirmed that they belonged to Julian Story. That discovery answered one painful question for Julian's family. But it did not explain what happened inside the unit, why it happened, or what evidence would eventually be presented before a jury. The legal case continued slowly. Chesser remained at James Nash House, a secure forensic mental health facility, and appeared at several hearings through a video connection. At a court hearing in December, prosecutors described the case as complex. They said several important pieces of evidence were still being examined at that time. That included the post-mortem report, information recovered from mobile phones, an examination of the fire scene, light pattern analysis, and a large amount of biological evidence. Those details show why this case could not move forward as quickly as its shocking headlines did. A headline can be published in minutes. A forensic investigation cannot. Every item must be examined, every conclusion must be supported, and every allegation must eventually be tested in court. That brings the case to today. Appearing from James Nash House, Chesser formally pleaded not guilty to both charges. Her lawyer also told the Adelaide Magistrates Court that investigations were underway into whether she is mentally competent. That does not mean the court has accepted a mental health defense. It does not mean that a decision has been made about her responsibility. It means that her mental competence is now an issue being examined as the case moves towards South Australia's Supreme Court. Chesser is expected to appear there for an arraignment later this year. An arraignment is the stage at which charges are formally presented before the higher court and the case moves closer to trial. Until that process is completed, the prosecution's claims remain allegations. Chesser has denied both charges and no court has found her guilty. The next stage will determine how the case proceeds and whether the questions surrounding her mental competence must be resolved before an ordinary criminal trial can begin. For Julian's family, however, the legal process is only one part of this story. Shortly after his death, the family thanked emergency workers, police, and members of the Port Lincoln community who had supported them. They described themselves as facing an unimaginable loss. That loss remains at the heart of everything that follows. Today's plea does not explain what happened to Julian. It does not reveal a motive, and it does not settle the questions surrounding the evidence recovered from the unit and the wider Port Lincoln area. What it does is mark a major turning point. For the first time, Tamika Chesser has formally answered the accusations against her. Her answer was not guilty. Now the case moves toward the Supreme Court, where the evidence, her mental competence, and the prosecution's allegations will face much closer examination. Until then, one fact must remain clear. Julian Story lost his life. His family has waited for answers since emergency crews entered that unit in June of 2025. The next court proceedings will decide how the case against Tamika Chesser continues. And the question now is not simply what police believe happened. It is what prosecutors can establish in court, what the defense will challenge, and whether a jury will ultimately be asked to decide the truth.